This is Going Under by Dann. She was beautiful, huge, as graceful as a racing liner. She was a floating crystal palace, as magnificent as anything J.P. Morgan could conceive. Designed by Alexander Carlyle, built by Harland and Wolff, she wore the golden band of the company along all 900 feet of her. She rose 175 feet like the side of a cliff, with 9 steel decks, 40 62-foot funnels, over 2,000 windows and side lights to illuminate the luxurious cabins and suites and public rooms. She weighed 46,000 tons, and her reciprocating engines and Parsons-type turbines could generate over 50,000 horsepower and speed the ship over 20 knots. She had a gymnasium, a Turkish bath, squash and racket courts, a swimming pool, libraries and lounges and sitting rooms. There were rooms and suites to accommodate 735 first-class passengers, 674 in second class, and over 1,000 in steerage. She was the RMS Titanic, and Stephen met Esme on her promenade deck as she pulled out of her Southampton dock, bound for New York on her maiden voyage. Esme stood beside him, resting what appeared to be a cedar box on the rail, gazed out over the cheering crowds on the docks below. She was plain-featured and quite young. She had a high forehead, small, straight nose, wet brown eyes which peeked out from under plucked, arched eyebrows, and a mouth that was a little too full. Her blonde hair, although clean, was carelessly brushed and tangled in the back. To Stephen, she seemed beautiful. "Hello," he said. Colored ribbons and confetti snakes recoiled through the air. Anything seemed possible. Esme glanced at him. "Hello, you," she said. "Pardon?" "I said, hello, you. That's an expression that was in vogue when this boat first sailed, if you'd care to know. It means, hello, I think you're interesting. Would consider sleeping with you if I were so inclined." "You must call it a ship," Stephen said. She laughed and for an instant looked at him intently, as if in that second she could see everything about him. He was taking this voyage because he was bored with his life. Nothing had ever really happened to him. He felt his face become hot. "Okay, ship. Does that make you feel better?" she asked. "Anyway, I want to pretend that I'm living in the past. I don't ever want to return to the present." "I suppose you do. Want to return, that is." "What makes you think that?" "Look how you're dressed. You shouldn't be wearing modern clothes on this ship. You'll have to change later, you know." She was perfectly dressed in a powder blue walking suit with matching jacket, a pleated velvet-trimmed front blouse, and an ostrich feather hat. She looked as if she'd stepped out of another century. "What's your name?" Stephen asked. "Esme." She turned the box that she was resting on the rail and opened the side facing the deck. "You see," she said to the box, "we really are here." "What did you say?" Stephen asked. "I was just talking to Papa," she said, closing and latching the box. "Who?" "I'll show you later if you like." Bells began to ring, and the ship's whistle cut the air. As a cheer from the dock and on board, the ship moved slowly out to sea. To Stephen it seemed that the land, not the ship, was moving. The whole of England floated peacefully away while the string band on the ship's bridge played Oscar Strauss. They watched until the land had dwindled to a thin line on the horizon, and Esme reached for Stephen's hand, squeezed it for a moment, and hurried away. Stephen found her again in the Café Parisien, sitting in a large wicker chair beside an ornately trellised wall. "Well, hello, you," Esme said, smiling. She was the model of a smart, stylish young lady. "Does that mean you're still interested?" Stephen asked, standing before her. Her smile was infectious. Stephen felt himself losing his poise, as he couldn't stop grinning. "But mais oui," she said. "That's French, which no one uses any more, but it was the language of the world when this ship first sailed." She relaxed suddenly in her chair, slumped down as if she could revert instantly to being a child, looked around the room as though Stephen had suddenly disappeared. "I believe it was English," she said. "Well," she said, looking up at him, "whatever. Means that I might be interested if you'd kindly sit down instead of looking at me from the heights." Stephen sat beside her. "Took you long enough to find me," Esme said. "Well, I had to dress, remember? Didn't find my previous attire." "I agree, and I apologize," she said quickly, as if suddenly afraid of hurting his feelings. She folded her hands behind the box that she'd centered perfectly on the damask-colored table. Her leg brushed his. Indeed, he did look fine. dressed in gray striped trousers, spats, black morning coat, blue vest, a silk cravat tied under a butterfly collar. "Now don't you feel better?" Stephen was taken with her. This had never happened to him before. A tall waiter disturbed him by asking if he wished to order cocktails, but Esme asked for a narcodrine instead. "I'm sorry, madam, but narcodrines or inhalers are not publicly sold on the ship." "Well, that's what I want." One would have to ask the steward for more modern refreshments. "You did say you wanted to live in the past," Stephen said. He ordered a Campari for her and a Drambuie for himself. "Right now I would prefer a robot to take my order," Esme said. "I'm sorry, but we have no robots on this ship either," the waiter said before turning away. "Are you going to show me what's inside the box?" Stephen asked. "Might cause a stir if I opened it here." "I would think you'd like that," Stephen said. "You see, you know me intimately already." Esme smiled and winked at someone 4 tables away. "Isn't he cute?" "Who?" "The little boy with the black hair parted in the middle." She waved at him. The boy ignored her and made an obscene gesture at a woman who looked to be his nanny. Then Esme opened the box, which drew the little boy's attention. She pulled out a full-sized head of a man and placed it gently beside the box. "Jesus," Stephen said. "Stephen, I'd like you to meet Papa." "Papa, this is Stephen." "Who's Stephen?" Papa said. "Where am I? Why is this going on? I'm frightened." Esme leaned toward the head and whispered into its ear. "He sometimes gets disoriented on awakening," she said to Stephen confidentially. "He still isn't used to it yet. He'll be all right in a moment." "I'm scared," Papa said in a fuller voice. "I'm alone in the dark." "Not any more," Esme said positively. "Papa, this is my friend, Stephen." "Hello, Papa," Stephen said awkwardly. "Hello, Stephen," the head said. Its voice was powerful now, commanding. "I'm pleased to meet you." Rolled its eyes and then said to Esme, "Turn me a bit now so I can see your friend without eye strain." The head had white hair, which was a bit yellowed on the ends. It was neatly trimmed at the sides, combed into a rather sooty pompadour in the front. The face was strong, although dissipated. It was the face of a man in his late 60s, lined and tanned. "My given name is Elliot," the head said. "Call me that, please." "Hello, Elliot," Stephen said. He had heard of such things, but had never seen one before. "These are going to be all the rage in the next few months," Esme said. "They aren't on the mass market yet. You can imagine their potential for both adults and children. They can be programmed to talk and react very realistically." "So I see," Stephen said, then smiled, accepting the compliment. "He also learns and thinks quite well," Esme continued. "I should hope so," said the head. "Is your father alive?" Stephen asked. "I am her father," the head said, his face betraying impatience. "At least give me some respect." "Be civil, Papa, or I'll close you up," Esme said, piqued. She looked at Stephen. "Yes, he died recently. That's the reason I'm taking this trip, and that's the reason," she nodded at the head. "He's marvelous, though. He is my father in every way." Mischievously, she added, "Well, I did make a few changes. Papa was very demanding." "You're ungrateful. Shut up, Papa." Papa shut his eyes. "That's all I have to say," Esme said, and he turned himself off. The little boy, who'd been staring unabashedly, came over to the table just as Esme was putting Papa back in the box. "Why'd you put him away?" he asked. "I want to talk to him. Take him out?" "No," Esme said firmly. "He's sleeping now. And what's your name?" "Michael. Can I please see the head, just for a minute?" "If you like, Michael, you can have a private audience with Papa tomorrow," Esme said. "How's that?" "I want to talk to him now." "Shouldn't you be getting back to your nanny?" Stephen asked, standing and indicating that Esme do the same. They would have no privacy here. "Stuff it," Michael said. "She's not my nanny. She's my sister." Then he pulled a face at Stephen. He was able to contort his lips, drawing the right side toward the left toward the right, as if they were made of rubber. Stephen and Esme walked out of the cafe and up the staircase to the boat deck, and Michael followed them. The boat deck was not too crowded, at least. It was brisk out, and the breeze had a chill to it. Looking forward, Stephen and Esme could see the ship's 4 huge smokestacks to their left and a cluster of 4 lifeboats to their right. The ocean was a smooth, deep green expanse, turning to blue toward the horizon. The sky was empty, except for a huge nuclear-powered airship that floated high over the Titanic. That was the dirigible California, French luxury liner capable of carrying 2,000 passengers. "Are you two married?" Michael asked. "No, we are not," Esme said impatiently. "Not yet, at least." And Stephen felt exhilarated at the thought of her really wanting him. Actually, it made no sense, for he could have any young woman he wanted. Why Esme? Simply because, just now, she was perfect. "You're quite pretty," Michael said to Esme. "Well, thank you," Esme replied, warming to him. "I like you, too." "Are you going to stay on the ship and die when it sinks?" "No," Esme said, as if taken aback. "What about your friend? You mean Papa?" Vexed, the boy said, "No, him," giving Stephen a nasty look. "Well, I don't know," Esme said. Her face was flushed. "Have you opted for a lifeboat, Stephen?" "Yes, of course I have." "Well, we're going to die on the ship." "Don't be silly," Esme said. "Well, we are." "Who's we?" Stephen asked. "My sister and I. We've made a pact to go down with the ship." "I don't believe it," Esme said. She stopped beside one of the lifeboats. The rest of the boat containing Papa on the rail gazed downwards in the big ocean spume curling away from the side of the ship. "He's just baiting us," Stephen said. "Anyway, he's too young to make such a decision. And his sister, if she's his sister, couldn't decide such a thing for him, even if she were his guardian. It would be illegal." "We're at sea," Michael said in the nagging tone children use. "I'll discuss the ramifications of my demise with Papa tomorrow. I'm sure he's more conversant with these things than you." "Shouldn't you be getting back to your sister now?" Stephen asked. Michael made the rubber lips face at him and then walked away, tugged at the back of his shorts as if his undergarments had bunched up underneath. He only turned around to wave goodbye to Esme, who blew him a kiss. "Intelligent little brat," Stephen said, to be ingratiating. But Esme looked as if she'd just now forgotten all about Stephen and the little boy. She stared at the box as tears rolled from her eyes. "Esme?" "I love him, and now he's dead," she said. She seemed to brighten then. She took Stephen's hand, and they went inside, down the stairs, through several noisy corridors. Stateroom parties were in full swing, to her suite. Stephen was a bit nervous, but all things considered, everything was progressing at a proper pace. Esme's suite had a parlor and a private promenade deck with Elizabethan half-timber walls. She led him directly into the plush-carpeted, velour-papered bedroom, which contained a huge four-poster bed, an antique night table, a desk, and stuffed chair beside the door. The ornate harp sculpture desk lamp was on, as was the lamp just inside the bed curtains. A porthole gave a view of sea and sky. To Stephen, it seemed as the bed overpowered the room. Esme pushed the desk lamp aside, then took Papa out of the box and placed him carefully in the center of the desk. "There," she said. At rest, the head seemed even more handsome and quite peaceful, though now and then an eyelid twitched. Then she undressed quickly, looked shyly away from Stephen, who was taking his time. She slipped between the parted curtains of the bed, complained that she could hear the damn engines thrumming right through these itchy pillows. She didn't like silk. After a moment, she sat up in bed and asked him if he intended to get undressed or just stand there. "I'm sorry," Stephen said. "It's just—" He nodded toward the head. "Papa is turned off, you know," Esme said. The head's left eyelid fluttered. Michael knocked on Esme's door at 7:30 the next morning. "Good morning," Michael said, looking Esme up and down. She had not bothered to put anything on before answering the door. "I came to see Papa. I won't disturb you." "Jesus, Michael, it's too early. Early bird gets the worm." "Oh," Esme said. "And what the hell does that mean?" "I calculated that my best chance of talking with Papa is if I woke you up. You go back to bed and I can talk with him in peace. My chances would be greatly diminished if—" "Come in." The steward in the hall just saw you naked. "Big deal. Look, why don't you come back later? I'm not ready for this, and I don't know why I let you in the room." "You see, it worked." Michael looked around. "He's in the bedroom, right?" Esme nodded and followed him in. Michael was wearing the same wrinkled shirt and shorts that he had worn yesterday. His hair was not combed, just tousled. "Is he with you too?" Michael asked. "If you mean Stephen, yes. I thought so, said Michael, and he sat down at the desk. Hello, Papa, he said. I'm frightened, the head said. It's so dark. I'm scared. Michael gave Esme a look. He's always like that when he's been shut off for a while, Esme said. Talk to him a bit more. It's Michael, the boy said. I came in here to talk to you. We're on the Titanic. Oh, Michael, the head said more confidently. I think I remember you. Why are you on the Titanic? Because it's going to sink. That's a silly reason, the head said confidently. There must be others. There are lots of others. Can't we have any privacy? Stephen said, sitting up in the bed. Esme sat beside him, shrugged, took a pull at her inhaler. Drugged, she looked even softer, more vulnerable. I thought you told me that Papa was turned off all night, he continued angrily. I'll tell you all about the Titanic, Michael said confidentially to the head. He leaned close to it and whispered intensely. He was turned off, Esme said. I just now turned him back on for Michael. She cuddled up to Stephen as intimately as if they had been in love for days. That seemed to mollify him. Do you have a spare narcodrine in there? Michael shouted. Stephen looked at Esme, who laughed. No, Esme said. You're too young for such things. She pulled the curtain so that the bed was now shut off from Michael and the head. Let him talk to Papa, she said. He'll be dead soon anyway. You mean you believe him? Stephen said. I'm going to talk to his sister, whoever she is, about this. Michael peered through the curtains. I heard what you said. I have very good hearing. I heard everything. Go ahead and talk to her. Talk to the captain if you like. Won't do you any good. I'm an international hero if you'd like to know. The girl who wears the camera in her hair already did an interview for me for the Pole. He closed the curtain. What does he mean? Esme asked. The woman reporter from Interfax, Stephen said. Michael opened the curtains again. Her job is to guess which passengers will opt to die and why. She interviews the most interesting passengers and gives her predictions to her viewers. She has a lot of them. They respond immediately to a poll taken several times every day. Keeps us in their minds. Everybody loves the smell of death. The curtain closed. Well, she hasn't tried to interview me, Esme said, pouting. Do you really want her to? And why not? I'm for conspicuous consumption. I want so much for this experience to be a success. Goodness, let the whole world watch us sink if they want. Might just as well take bets. Then in a conspiratorial whisper, she said, none of us knows who's really opted to die. That's part of the excitement. I suppose, Stephen said. Oh, you're such a prig, Esme said. One would think you're a doer. A what? A doer. All of us are either doers or voyeurs, isn't that right? But doers mean business. To illustrate, she cocked her head, stuck out her tongue, made gurgling noises as if she were drowning. The voyeurs, however, just along for the ride. Are you sure you're not a doer? Michael, who'd been eavesdropping again, said, referring to Stephen, he's not a doer, you can bet on that. He's a voyeur of the worst sort. He takes it all seriously. Now that's enough disrespect from both of you, Papa said richly. Michael, stop goading Stephen. Esme says she loves him. Esme, be nice to Michael. You just made my day. You don't have to threaten to turn me off. I'm turning myself off. I've got some thinking to do. Papa closed his eyes. Well, Esme said to Michael, who was now standing before the bed, trying to place his feet as wide apart as possible. He's never done that before. He's usually so afraid of being afraid when he wakes up. What did you say to him? Nothing much. Come on, Michael. I let you into the room, remember? I remember. Can I come into bed with you? Hell no, Stephen said. He's only a child, Esme said. She moved over to make room for Michael, who climbed in between her and Stephen. Be a sport. You're the man I love. Stephen moved closer to Esme so that Michael could come into the bed. They discussed the transmigration of souls. Michael was sure of it. Esme thought it all too confusing. Stephen had no real opinion. They finally managed to lose Michael by lunchtime. Esme seemed happy enough to be rid of the boy. They spent the rest of the day discovering the ship. They tried a quick dip in the pool, but the water was too cold and it was chilly outside. If the dirigible was floating above, they did not see it because the sky was covered with heavy gray clouds. They changed clothes, strolled along the glass-enclosed lower promenade deck, looked for the occasional flying fish, spent an interesting half-hour being interviewed by the woman from Interfax. Then they took a snack in the opulent first-class smoking room. Esme loved the mirrors and stained-glass windows. After they explored cabin and tourist class, Esme talked Stephen into a quick game of squash, which he played rather well. By dinner time, they found their way into the garish, blue-tiled Turkish bath. It was empty and hot, and they made gentle but exhausting love on one of the Caesar couches. Then they changed clothes again, danced in the lounge, and took a late supper in the cafe. He spent the night with Esme in her suite. It was about 4 in the morning when he was awakened by a hushed conversation. Rather than make himself known, Stephen feigned sleep and listened. "I can't make a decision," Esme said as she carefully paced back and forth beside the desk upon which Papa rested. "I'm still scared," Papa said in a weak voice. "Just give me a minute. This was so sudden." "Where did you say I am?" "The Titanic," Esme said angrily. "I have to make a decision. Come to your senses." "You've told me over and over what you know you must do, haven't you?" Papa said. His voice sounded better. Disorientation was leaving him. "Now you change your mind?" "I think things have changed." "And how is that?" "Stephen, Ah, Papa said. "So now love is the escape." "But do you know how long that will last?" "I didn't expect to meet him. Feel better about everything. It will pass. Right now, I don't want to die. You spent a fortune on this trip and on me. Now you want to throw it away. Look, the way you feel about Stephen is all for the better, don't you understand? It will make your passing away all the sweeter, because you're happy, in love, whatever you want to claim for it. But now you want to throw everything away that we've planned and take your life some other time, probably when you're desperate and unhappy, don't have me around to help you. You wish to die as mindlessly as you were born." "That's not so, Papa. But it's up to me to choose. You've made your choice. Now stick to it, or you'll drop dead like I did." "Esme, what the hell are you talking about?" Stephen said. Esme looked startled in the dim light and then said to Papa, "You were purposely talking loudly to wake him up, weren't you?" "You had me programmed to help you. I love you, and I care about you. You can't undo that." "I can do whatever I wish," Esme said petulantly. "And let me help you, as I always have. If I were alive and had my body, I would tell you exactly what I'm telling you now." "What is going on?" Stephen asked. "She's fooling you," Papa said gently to Stephen. "She's using you because she's frightened. She's grasping at anyone she can find." "What the hell is he telling you?" "The truth," Papa said. "I know all about fear. Don't you know that?" Esme sat beside Stephen on the bed and began to cry. Then, as if sliding easily into a new role, she looked at him and said, "I did program Papa to help me die. Papa and I talked everything over very carefully. We even discussed what to do if something like this came about." "You mean if you fell in love and wanted to live?" "And she decided that under no circumstances would she undo what she had done," Papa said. "She's planned the best possible death for herself, a death to be experienced and savored. She's given everything up and spent all her money to do it. She's broke. She can't go back now? Isn't that right, Esme?" Esme folded her hands, swallowed, and looked at Stephen. "Yes," she said. "But you're not sure," Stephen said. "I can see that." "I will help her as I always have," Papa said. "Jesus, shut this thing up," Stephen shouted. "He's not a—" "Please," Stephen said, "at least give us a chance. You're the first authentic experience I've ever had. I love you. I don't want it to end." Papa pleaded his own case eloquently to Esme, told him to shut up. The great ship hit an iceberg on the 4th night of the voyage, exactly 1 day earlier than scheduled. Stephen and Esme were standing by the rail of the promenade deck. Both were dressed in the early 20th century accoutrements provided by the ship. He in woolen trousers, jacket, motoring cap, and caped overcoat with a long scarf. She in a fur coat, a stylish Merry Widow hat, high-buttoned shoes, and a black velvet two-piece suit edged with white silk. She looked ravishing and very young, despite the clothes. Throw it away, Stephen said authoritatively. Now. Esme brought the cedar box containing Papa to her chest, as if she were about to throw it forward, then slowly placed it atop the rail again. I can't. Do you want me to do it? I don't see why I must throw him away. Because we're starting a new life together. That moment someone shouted, and as if in the distance a bell rang 3 times. Could there be another ship nearby? Esme asked. Esme, throw the box away, Stephen snapped, and then he saw it. He pulled Esme backward, away from the rail. An iceberg as high as the forecastle deck scraped against the side of the ship. It almost seemed that the bluish, glistening mountain of ice was another ship passing. The ice, rather than the ship, was moving. Pieces of ice rained upon the deck, slid across the varnished wood, and the iceberg was lost in the darkness astern. It must have been at least 100 feet high. Oh, my God! Esme screamed, rushing to the rail. What is it? Papa, I dropped him when you pulled me away from the iceberg. It's too late for that. Esme disappeared into the crowd, crying for Papa. It was bitter cold, and the boat deck was filled with people, all rushing about, shouting, scrambling for the lifeboats, and inevitably, those who had changed their mindset, had changed their minds at the last moment about going down with the ship were shouting the loudest, trying to be permitted into the boats, none of which had been lowered yet. There were 16 wooden lifeboats and 4 canvas Anglehearts, the collapsibles, but they could not be lowered away until the davits were clear to the 2 forward boats. We'll let you know when it's time to board, shouted an officer to the families crowding around him. The floor was listing. Esme was late, and Stephen wasn't going to wait. At this rate, the ship would be bowed down in the water in no time. She must be with Michael, he thought. The little bastard had talked her into dying. Michael had a stateroom on C deck. Stephen knocked, called to Michael and Esme, tried to open the door, finally kicked the lock free. Michael was sitting on the bed, which was a Pullman berth. His sister lay beside him, dead. Where's Esme? Stephen said, repelled by the sight of Michael sitting so calmly beside his dead sister. Not here, obviously. Michael smiled and made the rubber lips face. Jesus, Stephen said, put your coat on. You're coming with me. Michael laughed and patted down his hair. I'm already dead, just like my sister almost. I took a pill too, see? He held up a small brown bottle. Anyway, they wouldn't let me on a lifeboat. I didn't sign up for one, remember? You're a baby. I thought Papa explained all that to you. Michael lay down beside his sister and watched Stephen like a puppy with its head cocked at an odd angle. You do know where Esme is. Now tell me. You never understood her. She came here to die. An instant later, Michael stopped breathing. Stephen searched the ship, level by level, looking on the parties where those who had opted for death were having a last fling, looking into the lounges where many old couples were waiting for the end. He made his way down to F deck, where he had made love to Esme in the Turkish bath. The water was up to his knees. It was green and soapy. He was afraid, for the list was becoming worse minute by minute. The water rose even as he walked. He had to get to the stairs, had to get up and out onto a lifeboat, away from the ship, but on he walked, looking for Esme, unable to stop. He had to find her. She might even be on the boat deck right now, he thought, waiting through a corridor, but he had to satisfy himself that she wasn't down here. The Turkish bath was filling with water. The lights were still on, giving the room a ghostly illumination. Oddments floated in the room. Blue slippers, a comb, scrap of paper, cigarettes, several seamless plastic packages. On the farthest couch, Esme sat meditating, her eyes closed and hands folded in her lap. She wore a simple white dress. Overjoyed, he shouted to her. She jerked awake, looking disoriented, without a word waded toward the other exit, dipping her hands into the water as if to speed her on her way. Esme, where are you going? Stephen called, following. Don't run from me. An explosion pitched them both back into the water, and a wall gave way. A solid sheet of water seemed to be crashing into the room, smashing Stephen, pulling him under and sweeping him away. He fought to reach the surface, tried to swim back to find Esme. A lamp broke away from the ceiling, just missing him. Esme, he shouted, but he couldn't see her, and he found himself choking, swimming, as the water carried him through a corridor and away from her. Finally, Stephen was able to grab the iron curl of a railing and pull himself out onto a dry step. There was another explosion. The floor pitched. He looked down at the water, which filled the corridor, the Turkish bath, the entire deck. He screamed for Esme. The ship shuddered, and everything was quiet. In the great rooms, chandeliers hung at angles. Tables and chairs had skidded across the floors and seemed to squat against the walls like wooden beasts. Still the lights burned, as if all was quite correct, except gravity, which was misbehaving. Stephen walked and climbed, followed by the sea, as if in a dream. Numbed, he found himself back on the boat deck. Part of the deck was already submerged. Almost everyone had moved aft, climbing uphill as the bow dipped farther into the water. The lifeboats were gone, as were the crew. There were a few men and women atop the officers' quarters. They were working hard, trying to launch collapsible C and D, the only chance of getting safely away from the ship. "Hey!" Stephen called to them, just now coming to his senses. "Do you need any help up there?" He was ignored by those who were pushing one of the freed collapsibles off the port side of the roof. Someone shouted, "Damn!" The boat had landed upside down in the water. "It's better than nothing," a woman shouted. She and her friends jumped after the boat. Stephen shivered. He was not yet ready to leap into the 28-degree water, though he knew there wasn't much time left. He had to get away from the ship before it went down. Everyone on or close to the ship would be sucked under. He crossed to the starboard side, where some other men were trying to push the boat to the edge of the deck. The great ship was listing heavily to port. This time Stephen just joined the work. No one complained. They were trying to slide the boat over the edge on planks. All these people looked to be in top physical shape. Stephen noticed that about half of them were women wearing the same warm coats as the men. This was a game to all of them, he suspected, and they were enjoying it. Each one was going to beat the odds. One way or another, the very thrill was to outwit fate, opt to die and yet survive. But then the bridge was underwater. There was a terrible crashing, and Stephen slid along the floor as everything tilted. Everyone was shouting. "She's going down!" someone screamed. Indeed, the stern of the ship was swinging upward. The lights flickered. There was a roar as the entrails of the ship broke loose. Anchor chains, the huge engines and boilers. One of the huge black funnels fell, smashing into the water amid sparks. But still the ship was brilliantly lit, every porthole afire. The crow's nest before him was almost submerged. Stephen swam for it nevertheless. And he caught himself, tried to swim away from the ship, but it was too late. He felt himself being sucked back, pulled under. He was being sucked into this ventilator, which was in front of the forward funnel. He gasped, swallowed water, felt the wire mesh, the air shaft grating, then prevented him from being sucked under. He held his breath desperately. Water was surging all around him, and there was another explosion. Stephen felt warmth on his back as a blast of hot air pushed him upward, and he broke out into the freezing air. He swam for his life, away from the ship, away from the crashing and thudding of glass and wood, away from the debris of deck chairs, planking and ropes, especially away from the other people who were moaning, screaming at him, trying to grab him as a boy, trying to pull him down as the great ship sank. Swimming, he heard voices nearby and saw a dark shape. For a moment it didn't register, and he realized that he was near an overturned lifeboat, the collapsible he had seen pushed into the water. There were almost 30 men and women standing on it. Stephen tried to climb aboard, and someone shouted, "You'll sink us. We've too many already." A woman tried to hit Stephen with an oar, just missing his head. Stephen swam around to the other side of the boat. He grabbed hold again, found someone's foot, was kicked back into the water. "Come on," a man said. "Take my arm and I'll pull you up." "There's no room," someone else said. "There's enough room for one more." "No, there's not." The boat began to rock. "We'll all be in the water if we don't stop this," shouted the man who was holding Stephen afloat, and he pulled Stephen aboard. He stood with the others. Surely there was barely enough room. Everyone had formed a double line now facing the bow and leaned in the direction opposite the swells. Slowly the boat inched from the people in the water, all begging for life, one last chance. As he looked back and where the ship had once been, Stephen thought of Esme. He couldn't bear to think of her as dead, floating through the corridors of the ship. Those in the water could be easily heard. In fact, the calls seemed magnified, as if meant to be heard clearly by everyone who was safe as a punishment for past sins. "We're all debtors," said a woman standing beside Stephen. "I'm sure no one's coming to get us before dawn, when they have to pick up survivors." "We'll be the last pickup. That's if you intend to pick us up at all. Those in the water have to get their money's worth. Since we opted for death—" "I didn't," Stephen said almost to himself. "We've got it anyway." Stephen was numb but no longer cold. As if from far away, he heard the splash of someone falling from the boat. It was very slowly sinking as air was lost from under the hull. At times the water was up to Stephen's knees. He wasn't even shivering. At times distended or contracted. He measured it by the splashing of his companions as they fell overboard. He heard himself calling Esme, as if to say goodbye, perhaps to greet her. By dawn, Stephen was so muddled by the cold, he thought he was on land. The sea was full of debris: cork, steamer chairs, boxes, pilasters, rugs, carved wood, clothes, and of course, the bodies of those unfortunates who could not or would not survive. The great icebergs and the smaller ones, called growlers, looked like cliffs and mountainsides. The icebergs were sparkling and many-hued, all brilliant in the light, as if painted by some cheerless Gauguin of the north. "There," someone said, a woman's hoarse voice. "It's coming down. It's coming down." The dirigible looked like a huge white whale. It seemed to be descending through its more natural element, water, rather than the thin, cold air. Its electric engines could not be heard. In the distance, Stephen could see the other lifeboats. Soon the airship would begin to rescue those in the boats, which were now tied together in a cluster. As Stephen's thoughts wandered and his eyes watered from the reflected morning sunlight, he saw a piece of carved oak bobbing up and down near the boat, noticed a familiar face in the debris. It seemed to surround the lifeboat. There, just before the surface in his box, the lid open, eyes closed, floated Papa. Papa opened his eyes and looked at Stephen. Stephen screamed, lost his balance on the hull, plunged like a knife into the cold black water. The lower lounge of the dirigible California was dark and filled with survivors. Some sat in the flowered stuffed chairs, others just milled about. They were all watching lifelike holographic tapes of the sinking of the Titanic. The images filled the large room. Stephen stood in the back, away from the others who cheered each time there was a close-up of someone jumping overboard or slipping under the water. He pulled the scratchy woolen blanket around him and shivered. He'd been on the dirigible for over 24 hours. He was still chilled. A crewman had told him it was because of the injections he'd received when he boarded the airship. There was another cheer, and horrified, he saw that they were cheering for him. He watched himself being sucked into the ventilator and blown upward to the surface. His body ached from the battering. He had saved himself. He had survived, and that had been an actual experience. It was worth it for that. But poor Esme. "You had one of the most exciting experiences," the woman said to him as she touched his hand. He recoiled, and she shrugged, then moved on. "I wish to register a complaint," said a stocky man, dressed in period clothing, to one of the Titan officers, who was standing beside Stephen and sipping a cocktail. "Yes?" "I was saved against my wishes. I specifically took this voyage that I might pit myself against the elements." "Did you sign one of our protection waivers?" "I was not aware that we were required to sign any such thing." All such information was provided," the officer said, looking disinterested. "Those passengers who are truly committed to taking their chances sign, and we leave them to their own devices. Otherwise, we are responsible for every passenger's life." "I might just as well have jumped into the ocean at the beginning and gotten pulled out," the passenger said bitterly. The officer smiled. "Most want to test themselves as long as they can. Of course, if you want to register a formal complaint..." The passenger stomped away. "The man's trying to save face," the officer said to Stephen. "We see quite a bit of that. You seem to have an interesting ride. You gave us quite a start. We thought you were going to take a lifeboat with the others. You disappeared below deck. It was a bit more difficult to monitor you, but we managed. That's the fun for us. You were never in any danger, of course. Well, maybe a little." Stephen was shaken. He had felt that his experience had been authentic. He had really saved himself. But none of that had been real. Only Esme, and he saw her step into the room. Esme? He couldn't believe it. Esme! She walked over to him and smiled as she had the first time they'd met. She was holding a water-damaged cedar box. Hello, Stephen. Wasn't it exciting? Stephen threw his arms around her. She didn't respond. She waited a proper time, then disengaged herself. And look, she said, they've even found Papa. She opened the box and held it up to him. Papa's eyes fluttered open. For a moment his eyes were vague and unfocused, and they fastened on Esme and sharpened. Esme? Papa said uncertainly, and then he smiled. Esme, I've had the strangest dream. He laughed. I dreamed I was a head in a box. Esme snapped the box closed. Isn't he marvelous? She said. She patted the box and smiled. He almost had me, talked into going through with it this time.